What's up, everybody? Welcome to the ESPNFC Live alongside Shaka Hislop, Mark Ogden. I'm Dallin Cuff. Got a great show coming up for you here on a Wednesday. We've got Jose Mourinho out at Roma. We'll talk about his future and also how he kind of fits into the greater ecosystem of managerial tactics, if you will, today. We'll go through some, of course, hot takes across the global football landscape, and we'll end with our final thoughts. Let's start with Mourinho. He's out at Roma after 2.5 years, and obviously, whether it's Tottenham before that or Manchester United before that, there always seems to be, by the third year, a bit of a problem. We're going to look forward before we look back. And Ashak, I'll start with you, because the bookies have Newcastle as the favorite for where he goes next. I know you're excited about that, right? You're hoping it happens?
No, not at all. Not in the slightest, Dallin. Listen, I first of all, I don't think Eddie Howe has done anything to warrant this kind of speculation. I don't think Jose Mourinho could have taken Newcastle from where they were when Eddie Howe took over to certainly the accomplishments of last season, finishing top four and one cup final appearance. Now, this season has been a little bit disappointing, but I think that's because of injuries. So just to start, I think Eddie Howe deserves a longer tenure than this, and to get this train back on track. Secondly, Jose Mourinho, just in terms of style of football, is not something I've ever warmed to. Jose Mourinho, by all accounts, brings silverware and not much else. If that's your only focus, then he's your manager. But you look at his last two jobs: Roma, okay, Europa Conference League apart; Spurs, you got them to a cup final, but they didn't see that job through. There was no silverware, so I'm not sure there's an awful lot to boast of. So I just feel that in that regard, maybe Mourinho's light is dimming as well. And furthermore, from a Newcastle perspective, Newcastle have tried this, and aging manager who had unprecedented success, and didn't really pan out. Rafa Benitez came to Newcastle and was, by expected standards, an abject failure. So I'm not sure that Newcastle want to test history again.
Augie, what are your thoughts on this? Are the bookies just off? Does this seem like an obvious link, so he's the favorite there, or is this something, anything to this?
No, I think it's a bit knee-jerk. I think they've just basically thought that Eddie Howe's under pressure, Newcastle run by Saudi Arabia, ambition, want to make a splash. But, the reality is that when he was sat yesterday, I just thought back to that night at Old Trafford when he sprinted down the touchline after Porto got that really late, winner against United. He announced himself onto the world stage. That was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then he became the special one. He had his press conference at Chelsea. I'm the special one. And for about 4 or 5 years, he really was. He really was the biggest name in football. He was, at that point, bigger than Ronaldo, bigger than Messi, bigger than Sir Alex Ferguson. He was everything. He dominated the stage. He was brilliant as a coach. He was brilliant as a speaker, as a motivator. He was the man. But like I said, that was 20 years ago. You could argue that for the last 10 years, he's been yesterday's man. And I think that's quite sad. But, certainly Real Madrid onwards, his career has been a downward spiral, really. And all of his jobs have ended with acrimony, with the players that wanted him there. Maybe a little bit differently wrong, but still, they've not ended well. And I think you look at Mourinho as a coach, his style of management is now outdated. Not just with the players. I think we have to look at the modern game now. It's a game where, clubs want their teams to play stylish football, the Pep Guardiola way, rightly or wrongly. But also most big clubs are now run with a situation where they have a hierarchy of owner, sporting director, coach. Jose has never been comfortable working with a sporting director. He really is that he's almost like the last of the old breed of managers that wanted to control everything. And he doesn't really fit in anymore. He doesn't fit into the modern way of coaching, and his football doesn't fit in. His management upstairs, I guess, with the hierarchy doesn't fit in. So the Newcastle link for me, like Shaka said, Eddie Howe, he's had a really bad injury list. They were very close to getting a point off Man City at the weekend. It doesn't look great right now if you look at the run of results, but if you look at the deeper context, he's actually done a good job at Newcastle. So the Mourinho thing for me, it's a non-starter at Newcastle, total non-starter.
Let's dive into Mourinho, because you touched on some of the managerial tactics that may be outdated. I mean, he has. Chaka, you said this too. Mourinho, maybe one of his greatest gifts is branding. He branded himself the special one. He's constantly associated himself with winning trophies. Now, the trophies most recently was the Europa Conference League, as you said, which was a trophy that didn't exist 5 years ago because who cared? Like it's not competing for the Champions League, which he once was, or even the Europa League. It's the third tier. Why is he fallen off, if you will, Shaq? Is it tactics? Is it man management? Is it everything? Or has the game passed him by? Is he capable of succeeding like he once was?
Look, I think there's a sell-by date to everything in today's game, and managers are absolutely no different. I think players are looking for a different type of management style. They don't respond to certainly what you saw at Manchester United, being called out publicly in the way that many of those players were. And once one player turns, once that dressing room starts to go, it's really difficult to put the genie back in the bottle. So a lot of things I think went against Mourinho. I also feel that the game as a both from a playing perspective and from a fan's perspective, it's progressed. And while yes, he had a lot of success at Chelsea. Chelsea were desperate for silverware, and almost the playing style didn't matter. More and more clubs are wanting to recognize, wanting to have that their playing traditions be a part of who they are, a part of their identity. He goes to Spurs. Spurs have branded themselves through history about playing the game a certain way, and Mourinho was not that. So once that silverware doesn't, and listen, it's hard to win trophies, but once that escapes you, then you're left with absolutely nothing to claim as a fallback. And I think that's where Mourinho got caught out. And also I go back to his spell at Manchester United. And while he brought silverware, and you mentioned him a master of branding, he spoke about winning a treble at Manchester United, which was just bizarre for people like me who remember Manchester United winning trebles. The Community Shield, the Europa League, and the League Cup is not a treble Manchester United boast of. But all of a sudden, that became their new normal. The bar was lowered significantly. And I just feel, in a broader picture, people aren't falling for that in the same way.
I feel like a lot of times when I host a show with you guys, obviously I'm American, I have American sports context to things. And whether it's the NFL, which the game has developed a lot in 10 years, old defensive coaches had to change. They had to, Bill Belichick, who just famously, stepped away from, was parted ways. He didn't change that much, and he even got left behind. Whether it's Mike Krzyzewski at Duke and college basketball, everybody's got to adapt to different landscape. And changing sports have changed here drastically, just like global football has changed drastically in the last decade. Mark, is Mourinho unwilling or unable to adapt? Because it seems like you have to change with the times, otherwise you will get left behind.
Maybe it's a bit of both. I mean, you could argue that his kind of decline began when he went head-to-head with Pep Guardiola in Spain with Real and Barcelona, and that really kind of, Pep was a new guy, wasn't he? Pep was the guy that had the new idea, and Mourinho's tactics didn't work against Guardiola, not to a long-term extent, because obviously Barca became the very dominant team, and Jose hasn't really changed since then. Jose's DNA basically is older, experienced players that he can rely upon and a big centre forward, and that is basically, in a nutshell, what Mourinho does. That isn't the way that the game's played anymore. And it's about fluidity. It's about younger players, promising players, and Jose leaves behind when he goes generally an old squad and an expensive squad, and the game has moved on. So I don't think he can change. No, and I think even Sir Alex Ferguson changed. He was always changing his coaches, changing his mentality, but ultimately the game caught him up. And I think it's a really interesting point you make, Darren, about how the very greatest have ultimately get caught up with the times. At some point it will happen to Pep Guardiola. I can't think when, but that'd be fascinating, because when that happens, that will be the next wave of how the game changes, really. And we haven't seen it yet, but Jose was washed away by it, and what happens next and where he goes next is a big question, because I don't really see him heading to one of the big 5 leagues in Europe anymore.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then. And Mark, I'll stay with you, and then Shaq, you tag on. What would be a fit for him? Because owners may still be interested, given his success in the past, which doesn't indicate future success, as we're touching on. Or national teams may be interested. Do you see a potential landing spot for him somewhere?
I think this might surprise people, that he'll take a bit of a pause. There'll be nothing in Europe that really appeals to him, because he's done all the big clubs, he's done all the big jobs, and he's not going to get that offer anymore. He's going to get a mid-ranking team, and that isn't Jose Mourinho. I think, having covered Man United when he was there and spent a couple of summers in the US with them, he absolutely loves Los Angeles. He would always he would insist that the club the clubs that he coached use UCLA's facilities, because UCLA's facilities are amazing, the world-class facilities. And Jose always wanted to be there. He loved being in LA. So Jose Mourinho for MLS might actually be a thing if either the LA clubs, LAFC or Galaxy, were to be ambitious enough to say, Jose, would you come to MLS? I think it's something he'd consider, because look, we know he loves the celebrity. What a place to be. Jose Mourinho in Hollywood would be great. But I think he needs a new challenge now, but a challenge that isn't going to be difficult for him. If he went to MLS, he would be, box office news, front page news, and all the major, broadcasters, and he would love that. Goes to Europe, ain't going to happen. Saudi Arabia, yeah, it's okay for the money, but as we've seen with Jordan Henderson leaving Saudi Arabia and rumours about Benzema and Roberto Firmino, players and coaches aren't really happy there. So I think Jose could take a bit of a step back and think, if there's an opportunity in the MLS, especially if it's in LA, he'd take it.
Okay, LAFC just won the MLS Cup, and they have Steve Cherundolo, who's, at least for American soccer fans, one of the best guys we've ever had, at least on the left flank and running up and down the field. And then Greg Vanny, who came from Toronto, is at LA Galaxy. But yeah, maybe somebody would make a move here. Shock, what do you see as a potential landing spot for him, whether national team or club level?
My initial reaction was Saudi Arabia. I think he's exactly the kind of manager that they would want out there. High profile, would bring added eyeballs to that league, that maybe in a way that some of the players, even big name players like Benzema, simply have not done. So and they certainly could afford him, and given the paycheck that he would command. Because I just don't see any big club in Europe taking that chance with Jose Mourinho again. We had Gabriel Marcotti on the show last night, and of course a natural fit would be the Portuguese national team. Jose Mourinho is a knockout type tournament manager, and so that the shorter format of international football may very well suit Jose Mourinho. But of course, there's the small issue of Cristiano Ronaldo and their kind of acrimonious relationship, certainly in Madrid, and Ronaldo's continuing to play, and he's going to dictate when he steps down. So I see a huge clash of personalities there, with only, certainly for the time being, Ronaldo winning. So maybe if Ronaldo decides to call it a day himself, that might be a good fit for Jose Mourinho. Otherwise, I'm just really not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Go, Mark.
The Portugal situation has always been an intriguing one. It's always been suggested that ultimately he will manage Portugal, but you look at the squad they've got. That isn't a Jose Mourinho squad. Bernardo Silva, Diogo Jota, Ronaldo, as we know. All these flair players, I don't see how Mourinho takes that team on and makes them any better. He wouldn't be able to work with those players. They're frustrated. They're a great set of players, but they wouldn't fit the way that Jose works. So I just don't see that being an option. So I think MLS is... It's less likely than likely, but I do think it's something worth considering because of the unique pull of certain places, New York, LA, Jose's taste for celebrity. I don't see an international job appealing. England has been mentioned in the past, but again, that squad that has been built by Gareth Southgate is not a Jose Mourinho squad. Obviously, would love to have Harry Kane in his team, but again, that team is, people like Phil Foden, Bukayo Saka, these are great flair players. So, and the English FA, probably wouldn't want to pay whatever Jose Mourinho wanted. So, he's really got to take a step back and think, what next? What next?
Yeah, and he's 60 years old too, so it's not like we mentioned 20 years ago when he was the young kind of growing manager. This is kind of later in his career. It'll be interesting if he comes to MLS. I don't know what he's going to say to get on the front pages and like lead Sports Center like Messi is going to do, but I'd like to find out. Who knows what he would throw out there.
Oh, he would definitely be there. He would have a stack of things to say. Don't worry about that.
All right, that's it for Mourinho for right now. Let's move on to some hot takes throughout the world of football. And let's start with you get your guys' takes, your thoughts on them. This one, obviously, KDB, Kevin De Bruyne comes back into the squad and changes that entire City game this past weekend, gets them a big 3 points. Here's your line, and Shock, we'll start with you. Kevin De Bruyne is the Premier League's best ever midfielder.
That's a big claim, and one that right now, given his recent performances, given his impact against Newcastle, not just his impact. I mean, that the pass, the goal, it was incredible. And this is me with my Newcastle hat watching this unfold. It was unbelievable to witness. But there have been some great midfielders that have come through the Premier League. If we're talking goal scoring midfielders, look no further than Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard and his outsized impact with with Liverpool, albeit without lifting the kind of silverware that Manchester City has done. Paul Scholes immediately springs to mind when we're talking about the best midfielders to ever come to the Premier League. And probably in stylistically the closest parallel to Kevin De Bruyne. It's hard to disagree with the claim that Kevin De Bruyne is the best ever, but I think it deserves but more scrutiny. Let me just say, I'm not going to go out on that limb just yet.
Augie, provide more scrutiny. What do you got?
Yeah, well, I thought this at the weekend when he came back and had that great kind of cameo at Newcastle. So for me, Steven Gerrard, I think that similar plays in terms of box-to-box passing range, but De Bruyne has won a lot more than Gerrard. Gerrard never won the Premier League, so I think we can say he's ahead of Gerrard. Roy Keane, a great leader at Man United over the years, didn't score as many goals, didn't have the same passing range as De Bruyne. Scholes and De Bruyne, that similar passing range, similar way to create, similar goal scorers. I think they're probably the top two. Frank Lampard should get a mention, great goal scorer, but he didn't have the passing range of De Bruyne, Patrick Vieira. Yaya Toure had a great time at Man City, but I don't think any of those are ahead of De Bruyne. I think he really is up there. I think that, I think Scholes often gets overlooked because he was in that great team of Keane and Beckham and people like that. But, Scholes for me was probably the closest to Kevin De Bruyne, but he was very kind of below the radar. So I'm not going to say he's the best, but I don't think anyone's better than him, if that makes sense. That's kind of
no, it doesn't. That doesn't make any sense, Augie.
you guys are sitting firmly on the fence, just hanging out on the fence.
Yeah.
He's as good as a lot of
the boss. He's not the best, but he's definitely top two, and he's not number two.
There you go.
Which is funny because obviously we just had the Mourinho conversation. Mourinho didn't think he could play in the league. He comes going to Wolfsburg, comes back, and now we're having the conversation as the greatest midfielder ever. But that's neither here nor there. All right, next one. Next hot take for you guys to react to. Shaq, you started off again. Real Madrid are the best team in Europe and will win the UCL, the Champions League, this season.
Ooh, I think Manchester City are the best team in Europe. And if I'm having to place a bet right now, I'm picking City. I think Real Madrid have exceeded all expectations this season. Karim Benzema leaving, you wondered how that would impact. Nobody ever expected Jude Bellingham to settle in as they have. Ancelotti has changed their formation, and all of a sudden now we're playing with a front two and getting a tune out of Rodrigo and Vinicius as that front two. So they've exceeded expectations, and kind of given their dismantling of Barcelona in the Spanish Supercopa, I understand the sentiment. But right now, I think City we've seen the worst of City in the first half of the season, yet they're 2 points off the top of the Premier League. Ever since they've come back from the Club World Cup, I think you've seen them switch into gear. This traditionally is the time when City are at their best. So I am leaning Manchester City over Real Madrid.
Augie?
Well, Real are even the best team in Spain right now, are they? Because they're second. So I know they have a game in hand on Girona, but Girona are top. So let's give Girona a shout. But I do think that Real are probably the closest to Man City, certainly the Champions League. But for me, City are the best because look where they are without Kevin De Bruyne virtually all season, without Erling Haaland for 2 months. If you take Jude Bellingham out of the Real Madrid team, are they the same team that they are right now? So I think that, if everyone's fit, then I think Real run City close. But, over the course of a season when players are injured and players are missing, City have been able to deal with it much better than I think anyone else could. So City is still the team to beat. And I know a treble is an incredible achievement, but I still think they're odds on to do another treble this season. I don't see anybody stopping them in the league, the FA Cup, or the Champions League. Maybe Real, maybe Bayern, but I think if you had to say right now, can they do it? I said definitely they can. Yeah.
You guys agree with the bookies on ESPN Bet app for the American fans here that can place a bet. Manchester City is the favorite at 2-1. Bayern is next. Arsenal at 5.5 to 1, and then it's Real Madrid at 6 to 1 as ESPN Bet sees it right now. All right, let's keep it going. Javi, after some reports coming out that he's lost the locker room, he comes out today and says he has not. That is not true. Javi will not last the season at Barca. Augie, you start here.
Yeah, I mean, they won the league last season, so it shows the bar is very high at Camp Nou, or Olympic Stadium this season, I should say. Listen, I think that it's a tough one for Javi because he's got a great pedigree there, but when those stories start coming out of dressing rooms about managers losing the dressing room or not being happy, it only tends to end one way, with the manager going. I still think he's got a bit of time, but I mean, Shaka will know better than me what it's like when those noises come out. They don't come out of nowhere. I think he's done enough to see the season out. I think he's, when you win the league at any club, the league at any club, you deserve a bit more time. But are they doing that badly? Is he really deserving of the sack? I'm not sure. And who do they turn to? Who's out there that do a better job right now? So I think he should stay. I think he deserves a bit more time. But like I say, when the players start talking or rumours start coming out of the dressing room, it's usually a bad sign.
To that point, not only are the rumours coming out of the dressing room, but I think Laporta has kind of started to undermine Javi and his importance as manager for Barcelona. To the question, I don't think Javi will get sacked this season, but I'll be very surprised if he's the manager next season, unless there's an almighty turnaround between now and the end of the season. But if things continue as they have been, both in terms of results and in terms of playing style, where, let's be frank, Barcelona's playing style has been wanting, and that's putting it as nicely as I possibly can. I don't see how Xavi makes it to August 2024.
Okay. Let's go to Lionel Messi. Now, Luis Suarez, who's fresh off his FIFA Best Award again. So he's twice now the Player of the Year, which we're not going to debate that here.
Yeah, please, let's not.
Yeah, we beat the hell out of that one, so we're good here. Luis Suarez now joining Messi at Milan. Obviously, Busquets and Alba are already there, and they've got this whole crew now. The question is, Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez will help lead Inter Miami to an MLS Cup this year. Mark, first.
That is a formidable forward line, even if they are, at the ultimate of their career, shall we say. I mean, I think, when Messi's not there, Miami do obviously take a bit of a hit. But, Suarez, if he can get anywhere close to what he was at the top of his game, then he will score loads of goals. I mean, the last time I saw him play, he looks like a little bit out of shape and he probably needs to do a bit of work in the gym. But I do think that he's got this incredible natural ability, Suarez, to score a goal and to make things happen. But it's going to take a very good team to stop them because they've just got incredible firepower.
I totally agree. Listen, I find the easiest of players to fit in Major League Soccer of those aging post-European players, let's call it, are strikers. I think everywhere else on the park, players struggle largely. You saw Zlatan, where I thought he was well past his best, come in and have the impact that he did. I know he then went back to Europe and Milan and continued to exceed all expectation there. But more often than not, strikers can, because of their instinct, because of their touch, which you don't necessarily lose, they come in and are successful. So it leans that way for Inter Miami. And then when you see the impact that Lionel Messi had once he came in last season, how improved Inter Miami were, it's hard to disagree. But of course, now we're talking about Lionel Messi coming in, Luis Suarez coming in for an entire season. Can they last the demands of Major League Soccer? Because again, while we saw the impact of Messi once he came in, we also saw that once he picked up that injury while away on international duty, how Inter Miami fell off. So if everybody stays fit, I can totally see Inter Miami going on and lifting MLS Cup. The bigger question is, can they, at the age that they are, with the demands, not just with Inter Miami and Major League Soccer, but with international football?
Yeah, that's my big question too, because obviously it's a Copa America this summer, and it's going to be in the States, and it's going to be expanded. I mean, that's going to take a lot of time, and sometimes MLS doesn't give you a break for the whole life of the competition, so they're going to miss some games in there. We'll see how they pick up injuries, and obviously playing at Miami in the summer, Colorado at altitude, Texas in the summer, that stuff wears on guys. So we'll see how they handle that through the course of the entire season and then culminate in the playoffs in the fall. Next one up, and Shock, you'll start here. Kylian Mbappe will join Real Madrid, and Erling Haaland should join Barcelona.
What does should mean? Should
I'm reading Rob Moore's questions here. Do what I'm told a little bit.
Should is kind of vague. Listen, I think Kylian Mbappe will join Real Madrid. I think this summer. That's kind of been brewing. I understand. I understand that with Madrid being a little bit kind of cautious, given that they've been burnt at least once before, twice actually. If you go back to their failed 200 million euro bid. So yeah, I think that is I think that is on the cards. Erling Haaland should, well, yeah. I listen. I think Lewandowski, while he's aging, he hasn't had the season. And I know he scored a really good goal in that Super Copa final, but he hasn't had the impact this season. So maybe Barcelona need to start thinking about his successor in a way that Bayern Munich did with the same player a few years ago. We all know how that turned out. The trouble is with Barcelona, and for the foreseeable future, how do they sign Erling Haaland?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody they've signed, even when a free transfer like Ilkay Gundogan, it's been creatively financed. Let's say. So for somebody like Erling Haaland, if you have to pay a transfer fee, if you have to pay wages that he would inevitably command, I'm not sure how creative you can get with that, given Barcelona's position. So sure. Will he ever? Can he? I just don't see it.
So let me clarify for Rob. He wants to know would the return of two big dogs will help the Clasico get back to what it was with Messi and Ronaldo. So that is the should context there a little bit. So you have more context. If I was a good host, guys, I would ask this question before.
It's all about us, the viewer here. That's our only real concern.
That's all we really care about.
We can all chip in.
Yeah, well, that I'm not doing. Maybe you guys can. Augie, where are you?
Listen, the Clasico will always be one of the biggest games in football, and Barca will always be one of the biggest clubs, but they're not in a good place right now. And I think, 20 years ago when we had the Galacticos and Barca had their growth, they had much more power over their rivals. There wasn't the same competitive. There was no kind of Man City out there that was hooping all the best players up. So, I mean, Mbappe to Real, I think that's likely. I do think there might be a bit of a challenge from the Premier League because he's a free agent, so that makes him more affordable to Premier League clubs who, as we know, are the richest, most powerful clubs in the world. So Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Man United, these clubs might not appeal to Mbappe, but they can certainly afford to do a deal. So I think he will go to Madrid. But Barcelona, look, in the Spanish papers this week, they've been talking about Jesse Lingard as a free agent to Barcelona. Now, say what you like about Jesse Lingard, he has had a good career at Man United in England, but Jesse Lingard is nowhere near a Barcelona player. But that shows the situation the club are in right now. That he's even being mentioned with a move to Barcelona because he's a free agent, hasn't had a club for 6 months. So even if Barca are interested, the papers in Barcelona are linking them to Jesse Lingard, not Erling Haaland. That shows you what sort of situation that Barca are in right now. So having spoken to the Haaland camp, at the start of his career when he was at Salzburg, they had a plan. And the plan was he would go to Salzburg, he would then go to Germany, he would then go to another big league in Europe, and then he would move on again. He would pretty much, do a grand tour of Europe like Zlatan Ibrahimovic has done. So Barcelona at that point may have been on the list. But right now, why would he go to Barcelona? They don't even play at the new camp. So the whole draw of Barcelona isn't there. For me, I don't see Barca competing for Haaland for 5 years. And by that point, they're probably going to Real Madrid.
Okay, we're going to finish this up with both those two teams, though, in terms of conversation. Pep was asked this in the FIFA Best Awards. Would your Man City team have beaten his Barcelona teams? And all he said back was just an F-bomb was his response. So, Mark, I'll let you go first. Shaq, you tag it. Would City of current vintage beat the Barcelona treble teams of about a decade or so ago?
In a one-off game, possibly, but over, if he played them 5 times, I think Barca would win. I just think, Messi at his peak, Javi and Iniesta, all the, Piqué at his best, Puyol. Barca were an amazing team. Now, City got Haaland, as we know, but I do think that Barcelona team were the best club side I've ever seen. I don't think City would beat them over a course of 5 games, a series of 5 games, no.
I'm with Mark here. Listen, and I know sometimes we a little bit nostalgic in how we remember things, but I'm with Mark fully in that Barca team that won the 6 titles in a season is the best club team I've ever seen. I don't know, and while we're here and rightly singing Kevin De Bruyne's praises, I don't think the game, certainly at club level, has seen anybody quite like Lionel Messi, certainly in that kind of form. That team was just far too complete. I lean Barca, Pep's Barca all day long.
Unanimous, fellas. Great stuff. Enjoyed it. Tight 30 minutes right there. ESPNFC live on YouTube every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. You get the show every night, 6 p.m. Eastern. See you guys.